Time for a knife review. Yeah, we want knives, man. We love knives. Look at these three beautiful knives right here. This is where it's at. Old school lockbacks. I love it. On the bottom here, we have the Fox&Hound, Damascus, and Stag lockback. We have a Schrade Uncle Henry, an old timer, old school. And then we have the Case Mako. Of course, the fourth one that should be here for this video that makes sense would be the Buck 110, possibly the 112, Ranger, any kind of variant like that. Straight handle, finger groove, whatever. Buck should be represented here. But my last Buck 110, I've had many. My last 110 went to Colonel Richard Hunter. He was probably currently enjoying it, as well as many other knives. Just a gift to a friend. But I will replace that in the future, because everyone should deserve a Buck 110 in their collection. You gotta have it. It's old school. It's where knife addicts start. But anyway, first off, before I get into the specific review of this one and comparing it with some other very similar knives, I want to talk about the knife itself. Just this design of lockback. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's not tactical. It's not new age. There's no titanium here. All right. There's no anodizing here. There's no $500 price tag here. We're not talking about frame locks. We're not talking about anything crazy or new age or insanely expensive. Old school. These are knives you break out and you use for anything. You're not afraid of scratching them. You're not afraid of them breaking. These are workhorse knives. These are knives our fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers had. All right. I love that. It's very old school. I can appreciate all types of knives. I love the latest and greatest, custom titanium frame lock knives. I love them. I love tactical. But there's a big part of me that loves old school stuff too. And this is definitely old school. These are heavy. There's no pocket clips here. Okay? These are big hunks of steel in your pocket. But you know what? Sometimes it feels good to have a big hunk of steel with a sharp edge on it. It's very caveman-like. But yeah, it's some manly stuff going on this table. But anyway, the Fox&Hound one specifically, very interested in this one for many, many years. Ever since I was 9 years old, I've gotten Smoky Mountain Knife Works catalog, by mail, as well as Bud K, as well as some other ones too. But those are the two major catalogs that probably between those two companies, I had purchased my first 1,000 knives from the age 9 to the age 15. And every now and then I still will get something from either one of those companies if it, something I desire. But the one thing I've always been interested in, but never just bit the bullet, I never just bought one, was this exact knife. It was a Damascus Stag combo lockback. Now, I still didn't buy one. This was a gift from a viewer, which is greatly appreciated, and just wanted me to review it. And I had this about 5 months, on and off use, not consistent. Didn't touch it for the first probably 2 weeks, then use it for about maybe 3 days. I carried it out of the 5 months, probably a total of maybe 10 days, as an EDC knife. Don't carry these type knives for EDC very often. I do prefer, some of the newer age tactical knives just because of convenience. They are a bit lighter. They are, they do offer a little bit more in their, package overall. But these are workhorses. These are knives you want in your toolbox. These are knives you want in your pocket when you're working around the house doing projects. All right. But when you're out and about, you do want the convenience of a pocket clip and, lightweight and all that other crap. But finally, time for review. I love this knife. It's very, very cool. There's only a few things that I don't like about it that much. They're really small considerations. Overall, if you don't have time for the rest of the video, understand that I love it. I think it's one of the best bargains you can get out there for this type of knife, this style, and it's well worth the money. A lot of people avoid these because they think that it's very cheap, like Pakistani-made Damascus. It's not. Fox&Hound is a company that's actually, I believe the Fox&Hound name is trademarked through Smoky Mountain Knife Works. It's one of their subdivisions. It's their brand. The company that actually makes or produces these knives, the factory or facility, is Falcon, and they're in Italy. It's not Pakistani Damascus. It's Italian-made Damascus. It is real Stag from Italy. It's truly an Italy-made knife. It's an Italian knife. The reason the prices are so low, because the production processes are a little bit less. You will find that the fit and finish on these are not quite up to par with some of the other offerings on the market. I will show that in detail in a minute, just in comparing these. But overall, you're still getting a very good knife for the money. The quality of the Damascus, not the top, it's not the best Damascus out there. Some Damascus you can literally pay $1,000 an inch for. All kinds of crazy stuff, all kinds of crazy patterns. There's a huge variety out there in Damascus, but it's not cheap Pakistani Damascus either. I find that this takes a very fine edge. It just will not hold it. It is on the soft side. I can't verify exactly what the Rockwell is on this. From my experience in knives, I would have to assume probably a 57, 58, somewhere in that range. It's definitely a little bit on the lower side. But it's real. It's real Damascus. And as far as price, we're talking today, this knife is about 50 bucks, brand new. $49.99, I've seen them on Amazon, and I've also seen them, Smoking Mountain Knife Works still carries them. Obviously, it's their brand. They carry a variety of them. This size, the larger ones, which is, I believe, a 3.5 inch blade, 3.5 inch cutting edge, 4 inch blade, 5 inches closed. Let's verify that real quick. I do happen to have the ruler out. The larger ones are still 50 bucks. The difference is that they're a little bit more elaborate. Talk about that in a second. Yeah, 3.5 inches of cutting edge, 4 inches overall for legality purposes. So if your state, says you need a less than 4 inch blade, this isn't going to work for you. It's exactly 4 inches. So if you were doing something wrong and you happen to have your knife confiscated and went to court or whatever, it wouldn't be good for that purpose. But anyway, let's see, 5 inches closed, I believe. Yep, just in at 5 inches. And the weight on this one is 6.9 ounces. All right, it's a hunk of steel. These old school knives are not made to be lightweight. They're just made to work. What you'll find with most of these older lockbacks or old style lockbacks, pretty much a straight brass construction, usually a stainless blade of some sort. You don't find too many out there with like a straight carbon steel blade. You will find Damascus variants, but for the most part, stainless steel of some variety. But what you have here is brass liners, all right, brass bolsters. You have 4 of them, obviously, 2 up top and 2 on the bottom, and then your handle scales, whatever they may be. What's very common is wood. A lot of times rosewood. Rosewood's fancy looking, but still very widely available, very cheap. And of course, different natural materials. A lot of times you'll find bone on some of the cheaper models. You'll find like just a horse bone or some other type of widely available animal bone. Sometimes they're dyed different colors. Sometimes the bone will be jigged, like any of your slip joints out there, all those similar type of handle materials. What's most sought after on these types of knives are either genuine Stag or some kind of other more rare natural materials such as abalone, such as mother of pearl, things of that nature. And then of course some of the really high-end ones are even custom lockbacks of this design. You can have like mammoth ivory and stuff like that. But what people really like too with the genuine Stag is bark Stag. Bark Stag being the actual outside of the stag itself, of the antler, to be exposed, okay, as opposed to just the interior of it with like, some jigging done to it. What's really cool about this is for a $50 price tag, you are getting genuine Stag scales on this. And I will add, quite nicely finished, okay, very nicely rounded off. There's a decent palm swell heel. It's not super fat. Some of your cheap knives, like some Frost Cutlery stuff, and even like within Frost Cutlery, they have a lot of different subdivisions and sub companies and stuff like that, different names they go under. Some of them, they have a really nice material. I don't know why they do it though. The bolster is nice and flat, and then the palm swell, it flares out like really fat. It's almost like a ball in your hand. It's just really weird, kind of uncomfortable. This has a very decent palm swell on it. Fills up your hand a little bit, but it's not too fat, it's not ridiculous. And aesthetically it's pleasing. It's what it should be. Some people don't prefer that at all. They prefer completely flat, even with the handles. But as far as our ergonomics, it's very nice. Fills your hand out a little bit. It's what you kind of want. But I can tell you there's a hit with this knife on the fit and finish. Again, it's attention to detail. When you're making a lot of these and you're making them on the cheap, although you're using good materials, you're cutting out on your quality control. Now, the one thing you'll notice is on these handle scales, it's awesome slabs of real antler or stag, but the cuts are off. You can see the slight gap on this side. Well, it's not slight, it's a clear gap. So it's cut a little bit short. What they'll do is they'll make blanks of these, then they'll fit them, to each one. And they basically just quickly, if you imagine just a square with the general angle cut out, and what they'll do is they'll put it over top of the knife that's kind of half assembled, and okay, it's a little bit too big, and they just put it on a belt sander, put it on, okay, nope. And when you're making a bunch of these on an assembly line, especially if it's a Friday afternoon and you're wanting to go home, or perhaps a Monday morning, and you're cutting these, maybe you go a little bit too far, but you don't waste it, you don't throw it out, so you go, all right, a little bit of a gap. It's not, again, this is where price reflects on quality. All right, if you're buying a $200 or $300 knife of this style, you wouldn't expect something like that. For 50 bucks, it's not like you like it, it's just kind of more acceptable. It's not a huge deal. Again, being a working knife, it shouldn't be a big deal. It's not a presentation knife, although it has a nice presentation, it's meant for use. But anyway, what I did notice, of course, are the gaps on the scales, and it almost looks like they use some kind of a black epoxy and just kind of filled it in a little bit so it's not as noticeable. It's not a physical gap. There's some kind of material in that crevice, but it's not, of course, a perfect fit. Same thing on the back. Getting close here so you can see this. All right, more noticeable right there. Not a huge deal though. Nice finish though on it. I really like it. It's very polished as well. Like I said, nice and smooth. Another thing you'll notice here, even with the liners, you can see the little bit of a gap here in between the bolster and the liner. All right. The lockup on this is actually pretty nice. One thing with lockbacks, you always want to make sure that your lock bar has a nice flat top and butts up very even. There's a lot of metal on metal contact between the tang of your blade, all right, and your lock bar. Now, if you can take the knife apart, which you can because these are all pinned, but you'd want to make sure that this, basically the lock bar comes up and it's hooked on the edge, and then there's a little notch cut out of the back of the blade. All right, so as the blade turns, you hear the click. What's happening is the little bar is going boop, and it's sticking inside the back of your blade. Prevents it from moving, it locks it. All right, so when you push down on your lockback, what you're doing is there's a little pin right here. You can see it, brass pin. It's like a little seesaw. All right, push down this end goes up. So you push down your lock, just like that. What's happening is when you push to your lock down, your little hook part is popping up and allowing that to freely move. When it goes back in lock position, click, pops in. So a quick little explanation on lockback in case you didn't know. But it's very important for both of those surfaces to be completely flush. Again, hand fitting parts, it's different in a custom shop by a custom maker as opposed to an assembly line. You got, your lock bar here, on a sanding machine, zzz, zzz, zzz. Like I said, maybe you forgot your cup of coffee that morning, you're a little bit off, and you get a knife with blade play. This one locks up very nice. You can hear a nice, loud, an audible lock. With these lockbacks, you want a nice click. All right, you want that. You don't want to hear this with a lockback. All right, you want a nice click. It's a reassurance. Hey, my big, beefy, hard-to-use knife is locked open. No chance of that closing. Another thing with fit and finish, and it's something that bugs me, more so than even a little bit of blade play or the slight gaps in here, it's the lock bar. I hate when the lock bar is exposed. You see how, like, you could see where the end is rounded? In the open or closed position, you don't want to see that end piece, okay? It's just kind of an unfinished look. Whereas the case, even though the back is exposed a little bit, by design, it's not as bad. It's not sticking out. You can't really see the under part of it. Let's see on the straight. They're all kind of similar, but what I do like to see is, like you see on this part of the back spring, all right, see how it's nice and flush with that end? I don't really want to see the gap here. Functionally, it's fine. It's just, I don't want to see the bottom. It's hard to explain. Let me use this as a pointer. All right, where it kind of drops down as opposed to connects. It can't completely connect because your tolerances would have to be extremely tight. On your custom lockbacks and stuff, you might start seeing more attention to detail like that. But what I'm really referring to is, and it's so slight here, but I know it's noticeable to me, but underneath, you can see daylight through there. I don't like that. I don't have a really cheap one to give you a better example of it. But what I'd like to see is when this is either closed or locked open, I want to see this lock look more like this, like in that position, as opposed to that. See the bottom of it? Just a real slight detail, but I tend to notice that on cheap lockbacks like this, is that it's just never quite as nice. It's a very, very small detail, but it's something that I happen to notice and I prefer. If I didn't already talk about it, the Damascus quality, it is Italian made. Doesn't say anything specific except for that it's not Pakistani made Damascus. That tends to be some of the cheapest or least performing Damascus out there is the stuff in Pakistan. When you go and you buy your $10 Damascus fantasy looking fixed blade, you know, you say, oh, it's real Damascus. Yes, it's a very poor quality. The heat treat is very poor. The raw materials that they use to make it is poor. Yes, it's real, but it's really like the lowest end of what's real you can find. All right, it's like one step above getting some kind of like, you know, acid etched looking Damascus. It's not bad. Like I don't know if I said it before, but as far as performance, it takes an awesome edge. I can get this razor sharp, but it just won't hold it. It's too soft. From my experience with knives, if I had to guess, I would say this is probably between a 57 and 58 Rockwell. It seriously is on a little bit. It's a little bit too soft for my preference. I'd like to see this hold an edge a little bit longer. With the experience I've had with Damascus, although limited, I've had a variety. I've had some really high-end Damascus knives before, and they did perform for me. All right, it's not just for looks. People seem to think that Damascus is all about, you know, sitting in a display case somewhere. No, you can actually use your Damascus knives. It's just a matter of, it's like any other knife blade. How is it constructed? You know, how is it prepared? Is the heat treat proper? You know, is the annealing process done correctly? All that plays a role in how it's going to perform for you. But Damascus is very functional if it's made right. Overall, it's a really cool knife. For 50 bucks, you really can't beat it. If you're going to be hard pressed to find any kind of folding knife in any design with the materials that this uses. So you're taking high-end materials and you're cutting corners with the production process. You're getting a really decent knife. Not perfect. It's not amazing. It's not awesome. But if you just always want to try Damascus, or you always want to have a knife of this design, you can't beat it. You're not going to find anything out there that offers what this offers. All right, so it depends on what you're looking for, but this is definitely a great, probably the best entry knife into the world of Damascus, in my opinion, for the price. Now, back in the day, this exact knife used to be about $27, brand new. Like I said, now they're 50 bucks. This is kind of a plain Jane one. You'll find that for $50, a lot of them have the file work on the spine of the blade, sometimes file work on your back spring, and in some models I saw that they have a little bit of like jimping on your lock bar there. But anyway, I love it. Let me just compare a couple things with these knives. Another thing to notice too is when I got this one new, the tip was quite dull, and this is not from use. It's just the original grinds on this knife did not allow for a very acute tip. And I should use something for background, but let me get these lined up. So the Fox&Hound will be on the bottom, obviously. Then we have a Schrade, the Uncle Henry, and then the Case Mako. Now look at the tips. Let me get this here. See how these tips are more acute? They actually come to a finer point, whereas this, just by grind, it's dulled out. It's not from use. When they ground the spine of this blade, if they took more steel off, you can make for a more acute tip. It's not a huge deal. Doesn't affect your slicing at all. It's just for penetration. If you were to, say, cut into meat, if you're you know, field dressing an animal, some kind of game, that original, you know, pushing into the hide to make the original cut, that's where you know, having an acute point is much more effective. You know, of course, for other practical uses as well, but specifically because it's kind of a hunting style knife, when you originally poke into hide, which as all hunter knows, you know, I don't hunt, but I happen to know that animal's hide is a tough material. It's leather. It's just in its natural living form. But it's hard to puncture through, so you want a kind of a pointy knife. So if that's something, if you want to using this for that specific purpose of hunting, you may want to just take out your stones and just reprofile your tip so you have a nice point on there so it's easier to puncture through. As well as, you know, even if you want to use it as a makeshift awl in some cases, you know, even for whittling. But, you know, I have to say, I'm still extremely impressed. You know, for 50 bucks, like I said, having the materials this has, it's a fantastic purchase for anyone interested in a similar design. So, I really like it. I'm gonna have to try some of the other Fox&Hound stuff in the future. My initial impressions are very good. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and the review. I thank you very much for watching. As always, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and you can look forward to many more knife reviews, as well as some other videos in the near future. Take it easy, guys.